be glad therein. But more importantly, let us know that this is a new year that God has prepared for us. And listen to the voice of the Spirit as it says, I have set before thee an open door that no man can shut. Today, as every day, we should affirm that this is our time to move forward into that open door. Know with me that standing before you is nothing but your potential. And it remains potential until you grasp it, believe in yourself, do something with it. Move forward by faith, believing and knowing that only good and great things will happen to you because they are happening through you. I want to also give a shout out at this time to our own Reverend Paul, another one of my wonderful students. Reverend Paul, I want to let you know that I've been listening to you and you have been praying us in. And I want you to know that I've been appreciating those words that you've been speaking. As I so often have said to Reverend Lisa, all you needed, brother, was just a little airtime and you would be coming through. And you are doing that most magnificently, and know that we all appreciate you. But I'm grateful to our senior minister and pastor for giving me this opportunity to help set the tone for our collective spiritual movement into this next century as we begin in this new year. And it's so wonderful that I get to speak to you at the beginning of the year with this fantastic message, spiritual destination. It's the theme that Reverend Lisa has set forth for the month of January. So as we move forward into this idea, I'd like to begin with a couple of questions. One being asking yourself, where are you going? And secondly, where are you headed in your quest of spiritual unfoldment? I would like to think that our spiritual destination would be a special place that we consciously journey to, because there is something within us that is urging us to move forward in our search. You know, not too long ago, we were reminding ourselves of those three wise men who set out on a spiritual journey, set out on a spiritual destination. They went out in search of the Christ, and they allowed themselves to be guided by a star that appeared into the east, and it led them forward to that place where they found the child Jesus. Now imagine, likewise, something is guiding us continually. Even as I speak to you today, it is in motion within you, and that is your intuitive gift. It is your spiritual compass. And as we lean on it, it will guide us to our higher good. It is guiding each of us to that special place on our own special spiritual journey. We're here today in this moment as a part of this service because on some level, there was a part of ourselves at some point that was seeking a fulfilling connection. Something within ourselves reaching out, trying to connect with the greater presence, the I am presence that we are. Now, some of us connect easier with this divine presence, and because of that, we are more motivated and we are more focused. And we move forward a whole lot easier. And there are others who are less motivated and less focused. But you know, I'm so inspired when I read the words of the psalmist, who gives a word to identify those of us who find ourselves highly motivated and inspired as we move forward in this great adventure of life on our spiritual quest. And the psalmist speaks to the benefit that inures to those of us that are conscious of this and are moving forward without fear. And he says it this way. He says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit at the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, And in his law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bring forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Isn't that a wonderful testimony? The good that we have to look forward to, those of us that are highly inspired and moving consciously forward in this great adventure of life, in search of that great I am that we are, in search of somehow coming to a place where we're more focused and more connected with the divine presence. I believe that it is a very special journey to discover our divine self. For many of us on this journey, it has brought us to the destination where we are a part of right now, the Los Angeles Third Church for Spiritual Living, consciously. We were on a journey when we arrived at this connection. Some of us were conscious of the journey that we were on, seeking a greater fulfillment, out in search, knowing that there was a place where we could be enriched spiritually. Some others just happened to walk in accidentally, came into a place, enjoyed it, was there for the moment, and then left and returned occasionally. But those of us that are conscious of our quest, those of us that are inspired to be on a very special journey, when we came to this place and we entered in, we felt a presence, we felt a love, we felt a connectivity, and that allowed us to stay there. And upon staying there, we worked to make it what it is today and what it continues to be. I can think about the time when I first came to Los Angeles Third Church. Didn't realize that I was still on a journey. I thought that I had found my search already. See, for my own personal search had taken me through many spiritual centers where I encountered many different dogmas, heard many different ideologies, and many spiritual or ministerial personalities. You know, it all began in our adolescent years when we were first introduced to the concept of church. In those moments, well, we didn't have much of a choice in where we went or the extent of which we went. When I first went into a sanctuary, I was directed to go there by my grandmother. But, you know, there was no resistance. And upon entering in, I was delighted to be there. I found joy and happiness, and I enjoyed that experience. And then from there, I moved on to another, and to another, and to another, as circumstances in life would dictate. But in each instance, there was no resistance, but rather an unfoldment that I felt that was continuing to take place. And each one appeared to be a step towards something that was calling me forward. Now, each of us have a different experience for our journeys, and each of us start out in a different place, and we have a different level of consciousness. For some of us, we were adults when we first started on this journey, and it was something that happened accidentally. And we're still where we are because we're creatures of habit. We go to a place and we just stay in that place, and we just repeat an action for no particular reason other than it's an action to repeat. But others are seeking something special. We heard a word, and that word caused something within us to click. We had a feeling, and that feeling wanted us to gravitate even more. Something was pulling us, and as we were pulled, we felt empowered. Whether it was a word that someone said, whether it was a song that someone had sang, whether it was prose that someone had spoke. Regardless of what it was, we realized that we were on a journey. and we were moving with a whole lot of love. You know, after being on my journey, after being in a traditional church setting for so long, one day, somehow, I came into this great institution known as Founders Church of Religious Science. And I knew at that moment I was on a quest. I knew at that moment that I was on a spiritual journey, that I was involved seeking a spiritual destination. Did not know whether or not this was it. Did not even give that conscious thought. Only thing I know is that I was being pulled to this place for whatever reason. And I was about to enter in. And as I entered in, I'm observing everyone that was all around. Everyone seemed loving, smiling, happy, glad to be where they were, greeting everyone very warmly. And I remember entering in the building. And upon entering in the building, the special presence that I felt, just in an all-encompassing sense of love and peace. And it was so wonderfully overwhelming. I remember going and taking a seat, sitting down in a very quiet place, listening to very soft music, but more importantly, feeling the presence of God and acknowledging that divine presence that I was feeling. And then the service began. And I can recall even to this day, the words spoken by the late Dr. Fred Hayes when he said, "Welcome. We are glad that you are here. We were expecting you." Now, I'm sure that's the greeting that he gave to everyone. But for some reason, that greeting took on a personal significance to me. I personalized it, like they were waiting for me. They were expecting me. And now I had arrived. As a part of my journey on this quest to find my spiritual destination, I had entered into a place, felt the presence of God, was greeted so warmly, sitting so comfortably, being welcomed so lovingly. And then after sitting there and going through that experience, I left out of the sanctuary at the conclusion of that service, walked down the street to the Institute building. Once again, and then walking into that building, it was like walking into a mystical environment. That entire day, that entire experience was just so awesome. Obviously, that I still can recall it in vivid detail up to this day. And in that moment, signing up immediately, registering for classes, and continuing my spiritual expansion. Conscious of what I was doing, motivated, focused, inspired. And after doing that and having that experience, I can recall Sundays and Wednesdays could not come fast enough. Could not wait for a Sunday morning to get to the church immediately, to walk into that sanctuary, to be engulfed in the silence, to be motivated, feeling all that love, and just sitting there and communing with the presence, forgetting and shedding all anxiety, all anxiousness, any and all things that would try to rob me of my joy. Allowing it all just to move away from me and allow myself to be encapsulated so completely by the divine spirit. And in that moment, began to allow myself to be spiritually empowered. And that's what church should be about. When we come, we come because we're looking for a social outlet. We don't come because we're trying to catch up on the latest conversations with someone else. We come because we are on a quest for our own spiritual growth. It is the moment of our empowerment. It is the time where we join together to be a part of a collective spiritual consciousness, knowing that as we do so, we become empowered. You know, that experience from Founders left a mark upon me that I carried even to the moment when I entered LA Third Church. In getting there, and as I said earlier, I thought that my spiritual destination had been reached, that I had arrived. I was being fed fully, and I was being inspired so completely, and I was getting all that I needed for my growth and my unfoldment. The words of the psalmist were true. I was prospering in all that I did because I had engulfed and embraced and empowered and brought spirit to everything that was a part of my experience. I blessed everything that I was a part of. I would awake in the day and proclaim that it was a day of good and that God had preceded me in that day. I would walk as one filled with love and motivated by spirit, knowing that it was God that was attending to me throughout that day. And if there was a special need, I would speak to my circumstance as one empowered by the Spirit, knowing that my word was spirit and it was light, and it would cause movements of good to take place in my circumstance. That's not something that happens only to me. That should be the expectation of all of us that are focused and motivated and inspired to be a part of this spiritual journey, all of us that are seeking to be at one forever with this divine presence, and all of us that are conscious that right where we are, God is. And because God is right where we are, our expectation is that it is empowering us. Makes no difference what it is that we are doing. Whatever our vocation might be, whatever our outer interests might be, when we go and we greet it, knowing that we go anointed with spirit, and God is empowering us to be the greatest that we could be at whatever it is that we're doing. When that's our expectation, we will meet success, and we will be, as the psalmist says, whatever we do shall prosper. You know, we were at the beginning of a new year. And a new year is always a great opportunity for all of us to kind of look back at the prior year and to kind of look retrospectively at ourselves and the things that we were able to do, the things that we had planned to do, and the things that we did not do. And look at the reasons why we did or did not. But then release all of that and become forward thinking. To think of the words of the writer who said, you know, now I press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of God. That's our new calling in this year, to move forward, regardless of what had happened in our past. But when we look at our past and we examine ourselves and we ask ourselves, did I move forward throughout the year as one anointed by Spirit? Did I demonstrate from the level that one should expect to demonstrate from a place of connection with God? And if I did not, how do I alter that now in this new year? There are a lot of things that, as we look back, that we think that we can do differently. The good thing is that God has given us the opportunity to do just that, to do things differently. Going back to my experience at Founders and the one that I carried forward when I came to LA Third Church. You know, when I entered into a place that was silent. It was loving. And I could feel the embrace of spirit. There was not a lot of conversation. There was just a lot of peace. One would easily just go to their seat and sit in the stillness and enjoy the communion of spirit. Not having time for a lot of conversation. It was time for all of that after church. But right now, it was a moment of preparing oneself to receive the word of inspiration that was to come, to receive that nourishing empowerment that the speaker was going to bring that moment. and to be open and receptive to that. That becomes a conscious act. That becomes something that when we go to church, we are consciously expecting, not to enter in and to get involved in something to the contrary of that, but to come in and sit still, sit quiet, and ready ourselves for that which is to come. You know, when I took on the mantle of being the senior minister at LA Third, I made it my quest to make sure I was at church, and I was the first one there every Sunday morning. Because what I wanted to do, and this was my own personal desire, was to create that atmosphere that I had experienced, to create a vibration in the building, so that whomever came in, whether it was a first-time visitor or someone who was part of the family, that upon entering in, they would not only feel the divine presence, but they would feel comfortable enough in shedding any and all baggage that had plagued them prior to that moment, to let go and to embrace God. And many of you, and many others who have walked into the light at this moment, have always said, you know, one of the greatest things that I enjoy about coming to this church is when I walked in, the presence that I felt. Each of us have a responsibility to create that. And now we're in a new year, another time, where we can speak a word, where we can bless our church, where we can bless ourselves, where we can become visionaries of what it is that we wish to accomplish in this year. This opportunity that God has given unto us. What are you going to do with it? This is your time. This is your moment. This is your opportunity. We're all on our own journeys, each of us seeking something different. But each of us should be willing to be empowered by Spirit. You know, we so often don't think about the empowering and the enrichment of Spirit until we are in a moment of difficulty. When we're in our darkest moments, when we're dealing with major challenges, and all of a sudden, the challenge becomes overwhelming. The challenge robs us of our happiness. The challenge steals our joy. The challenge causes us to become a whole different person. And see, it's in those moments where we should be empowered enough to say to that challenge, you have no power other than that which I give you. Understanding that God has given us that ability. But see, we allow the challenge to overwhelm us. We forget about who we are. We forget about the source of our power. We forget about what it is that we are connected with. And that's because in our moments prior to that time, our focus was somewhere else. This is a new year. It's a new time. It's a new moment. It's your opportunity to become the champion that you are. It's your time to seize power. It's your time to embrace a greater faith. It's your time to press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of God. It's your time to spend more time in spiritual communion. It's your time to be more reflective of the words that the psalmist spoke when he says, blessed is the man, blessed is the person who finds joy in meditating day and night on the presence of God. Now, is that to say that you do nothing else? No, it's not to say that at all. But it says that the more time that you find to do that, the more empowered you become. The psalmist likened it as a tree. He used a part of nature. He says someone that does this will be like a tree that is planted by a river, who shall bring forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither. And if you ever just observe nature, you will notice that even certain trees, even of the same species, some grow faster, bigger, and greater than others. They all grow, but some are much more magnificent than others. And it all is dependent upon their root system, that source of themselves that reaches into the earth and pulls forth their nourishment. And the more nourishment the tree gets, the greater it grows. The more nourishment it gets, the greater its fruit, the greater its harvest. The same is true for us. The more we reach into the Spirit, the greater we grow. The more we reach into the Spirit, the greater faith that we have. The more that we reach in, the greater control we have over our circumstance. The more we reach in, we lessen our fears. You know, we're in a moment now where the world is in a crisis. Everyone is in a panic everywhere because of the pandemic that's going on. This corona thing has just turned everything upside down. Most of us don't know the last time we've been in a worship service physically because of the need of social distancing. Everything that's necessary in order to keep this thing under control. And it has caused panic. But rather than for us to be panicking, we should be finding ourselves speaking a word on our own behalf and then on the behalf of all others everywhere. Granted, we need to do the things that we are directed to do, to wear our masks, to safe distance from each other, to wash our hands. But likewise, to constantly remind ourselves that God has not given me the spirit of fear. But God has anointed me with power. God has implanted itself within me. There is but one life. That life is God. And that life is the life that is living through me. There is but one mind. That mind is God. And that is the mind that I think through all ways. There is but one source of good that exists throughout the manifest universe. And that good is God. That is my Father. And we are one, right where I am always, every day. God is. And where God is, everything is good. This has to be our constant reminder. It's a word that I say all the time. It's a word I implore you to say all the time. It's something that we should constantly remind yourself. Because when you remind yourself of that, you then become reminded of your own greatness. When you remind yourself of that, then you have a higher expectation of achievement. When you remind yourself, you will move forward into the rest of this thing that you call your life without fear. But oh, you have to remind yourself. Now, does that mean that after making these constant affirmations, after being constantly reminded that these things are not going to come upon you? No, doesn't mean that at all. But it governs your reaction to it. It takes away the fear. It lets you know that even though you may have these challenges, because they are going to come as long as we wear this body temple, they are going to come. But we deal with them differently. We deal with them effectively. We deal with them from a place of power and a place of strength, and not from a place of weakness. Everything that we are involved with, our jobs, our businesses, our family situations, our social situations, the things that we volunteer our lives with all of them. We approach it from this place that we are led, guided, and directed by Spirit. And that which I need, God provides me with. That which I need to say comes to me at the right time to say it. The opportunities that I need, they come to me. And there is nothing that can deny me or block my good. I am that I am. I am that I am. Right where I am, God is. And where God is, everything is good. We move into this new year. We open this door of life that is before us. Walk full of faith, determined, without fear, knowing that greater good awaits each of us. Now, we can put our own roadblocks there if we want, but we need to realize that every roadblock we have placed there, or we can decide that I'm moving the roadblocks. I'm not going to let ideas of age, not going to let ideas of racism, I'm not going to let ideas of lack, I'm not going to allow ideas of sickness, I'm not going to allow these things to rob me of my rightful place in life. I'm going to speak a word and know that the word that I speak is power and it's filled with light and love, because this word is anointed by God itself. The place it comes from is an anointed place. Today we should all say to ourselves, this is a moment now that I stepped into my glory. I stepped into my glory as one knowing God has ordained this for me, without concern or regard to what anyone might say. I'm stepping into this path, fully anointed, embracing all that I need, knowing that I am supplied with everything necessary to have a wonderful, enjoyable, and loving and great experience. That's our destiny. Name it, claim it, and without fear, move forward, believing. Know with me, it's done unto you as you believe. What is it that you are willing to believe for yourself in this year as you move forward in your own spiritual destination? Move forward with love, knowing that God has made the way for you. Love, peace, and happiness to all of you this morning. Much joy. Thank you so much.